Hey, good Tuesday evening. 5 News Chief Meteorologist Skot Covert here. We begin with another weather impact alert. This for Thursday into Friday. We are tracking an impactful snowstorm that is likely to bring accumulations, thus impacts locally here to northwest Arkansas, the River Valley, and eastern Oklahoma. We're going to dive into the details, into the nitty-gritty right here on 5+. This is information and data you're not going to get anywhere else. We start with a winter weather watch in effect for East Oklahoma, the Arkansas River Valley, and as you can see, a large majority of Arkansas. There's only really a handful of counties that does include northwest Arkansas that's not currently under that winter storm watch. If you're listening and you're watching in northwest Arkansas, you're thinking, well, boy, Scott, you were tracking some snow coming into the area. Why aren't we under a watch? Well, the threshold for a watch or a warning to be issued is for a forecast that calls for upwards of 4 inches of accumulating snow. In our forecast for northwest Arkansas, the forecast from the National Weather Service does not meet those standards, and therefore we have no active winter weather alerts in effect for the northwest part of the state. Here's what I predict is going to happen. As we get closer to the event, should all of the models and the data that's continuously coming in continue to showcase what we're looking at in the River Valley and the Ouachitas, I suspect what's right now a watch will probably get upgraded to a warning. Maybe not everybody in blue here, but probably several of us will be upgraded to that warning. Meanwhile, in northwest Arkansas, once we get a little bit closer, once there's enough confidence that continues to develop, we probably find ourselves under a winter weather advisory. That's one step below a watch or a warning. At any rate, we're going to see accumulating snow. We can look at the broad picture with the Winter Storm Severity Index. This is one of those newish things, and it takes into account a whole bunch of different factors. Ultimately, what it's wanting to do is this map, this product that we're looking at, wants to say, you know what, how much of a pain in the rear end is this system going to be? Am I allowed to say that on Plus? Am I allowed to say rear end? I think I am. I did it. You know what? I did it. At any rate, we're expecting minor impacts north of Interstate 40. So this is probably not going to be the worst winter weather event we've ever had. We're likely not to set any snowfall records. In fact, for many of us, it may not even be a memorable event. Meanwhile, in the Arkansas River Valley, southeast Oklahoma, we get into the Ouachitas. That's where we have a little bit more confidence that we're going to see more snowfall, which is a little bit contrary to what normally happens. Typically, northwest Arkansas accumulates more than the River Valley, just given elevation, but that's not the setup that we're looking at with this one. At any rate, in orange, that's going to be our moderate impacts. We can zoom out and we can look at all of Arkansas, and you can see those moderate impacts extend into the Little Rock, Pine Bluff area, Texarkana as well. So if you have travel plans beginning as early as Thursday morning, continuing into all day Friday, and I'll even go as far to say Saturday, well, this is something that you might want to just keep in mind. If you're heading to Texas, anywhere between Texarkana through Dallas, northeast Texas, they're looking at major impacts. It's not necessarily just going to be snow there. They're looking at the potential for some sleet and freezing rain, and that is going to cause some issues. What about impacts here in northwest Arkansas, here in the Arkansas River Valley, here in the Ouachitas? Travel is going to become a problem. We're going to have enough snow out on the roadways. Temperatures are going to be below freezing pretty early in the day that it's going to start to accumulate. It's going to stick early, and we're going to see those road conditions deteriorate somewhat quickly on Thursday. Closures, probably going to upgrade that into the high category within the next couple of hours. Right now, I'll keep it at medium. We continue to see extreme cold. Now, we're adjusting to it. It's been cold for the last few days, and so it's not as big of an issue as it would be otherwise, but it stays relatively below average. Overnights especially, we're dipping down into the teens and low 20s. There is a little bit of a wind chill issue out there, so we got to continue dripping those faucets. We got to keep the pipes protected. We got to keep the pets and the people protected. You know, the 3 Ps that we've been talking about the last several days. In terms of power outages, I'm keeping us in the low category, and I want to explain why. There is a potential for some isolated power outages out there. It's not a zero chance, but it is low. And the reason why in this specific winter storm it's not higher, you often see power outages with freezing rain. That's when it rains and it starts to freeze immediately upon contact. That adds a whole lot of weight to those power lines, those power poles, trees, tree limbs, they snap. You have a big, big old mess out there. We're not expecting that here. We are expecting a very wet snow, which is going to be a little bit heavier than what we have seen in the last few snow events, which has been typically a dusty or a drier snow. At any rate, power outages low given what we've got. coming our direction. Let's dive into the latest high-resolution model data. This is our in-house model. It's not public, but I'm happy to show it to you. This is going to be Thursday morning around 10:30. We've got snow initially moving into parts of LaFleur, Scott counties, pushing into southern Sebastian. Look at our temperatures right there. It's not going to be a concern whether or not this stuff sticks to the roadways, the sidewalks. It is going to stick, and it will probably do so relatively quickly. By around 11 o'clock, we're closing in on that I-40 corridor, assuming this thing doesn't speed up or slow down. This is all subject to change, of course, and I do think there will be some changes, so I advise you to stay tuned. We'll pass those along to you as we get them. By lunchtime, we've got snow, more than likely in Fort Smith, Paris, and Ozark. It's lifting towards the north as our low pressure gets a little bit closer, and that snow is going to make its way into northwest Arkansas, where we do expect some accumulations to begin occurring at that time as well. By Thursday evening, we've got scattered snow showers, perhaps not as widespread as the early onset, but we do expect some additional snow bands to move into the River Valley, southeast Oklahoma. Meanwhile, we stick with just scattered lighter showers north of Interstate 40. That's one of the reasons why those higher totals are probably going to be found in places like Fort Smith, Poteau, Waldron, Mena, is certainly going to be the case there as well. This is going to be coming to an end a little bit earlier than initially thought, just because it's speeding up. It's arriving earlier. It's out of our hair a little bit earlier. This is going to be what we're looking at early Friday morning, 2:30. It's exiting. When does it start? How can you plan around this winter storm on Thursday? This is a look at what we expect the snow to begin, our start times, if you will. This is, of course, somewhat of a broader picture. I hope within the next 12 hours to really narrow down some of these windows, these arrivals, to help you out a little bit more. So with that said, here in blue, 7 in the morning to noon is the general timeline for when snow is going to start. 10 to 2 here in the lighter blue, green 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. How much? That's the million-dollar question. How much snow are we going to get, Scott? I can't tell you how many times that's been sent to me on Facebook and in the comment section as well. Here's what we're looking at. 1 to 3 inches locally, Bentonville, Springdale, Fayetteville, Bella Vista, Eureka Springs, Avoca, Goshen, Decatur, Gentry, Sulphur Springs. They're in lighter blue. 1 to 3 is going to be probably where we end up. As we work our way further towards the south, we encounter more moisture in the atmosphere because we're closer to that low pressure, which is pulling the snow than the moisture into the area. 2 to 4 inches, I think, is going to be common between Sallisaw, Clarksville. I would include Paris, Ozark, perhaps Huntsville and West Fork in that as well. We find ourselves in southern LaFleur, southern Sebastian, parts of Scott County, parts of Logan County. I think that's where we're going to find our sweet spot. 3 to 6 inches is going to be common. I emphasize the word common because it's likely that there are probably a few isolated locations. I'm not guaranteeing you what I'm about to say, but a few isolated locations where we exceed 6 inches, especially once we get closer to places like Mena and Glenwood, areas like that. Overnight tonight, we dip down into the teens across northwest Arkansas, low 20s. Winds will still be out of the north, but they should be somewhat light, so wind chill values aren't going to be too much lower than these numbers. Your 10-day forecast, northwest Arkansas, we don't get above freezing tomorrow. We'll briefly do it on Thursday before the snow begins to arrive, so we're still dripping those faucets. We're protecting the pipes through your Wednesday, probably Thursday, and really the majority of Friday as well. Given the system is moving in a little bit earlier, what I've done is increased your snow probabilities on Thursday, while I've decreased them on Friday with the expectation that most of the snow is wrapping up relatively early in the day, probably before sunrise. And so while the bulk of it may fall after midnight Friday, technically speaking, I think it's likely going to be tapering off before a lot of us even wake up come Friday morning. If you have travel plans and you're thinking, maybe I can wait till Saturday, or maybe you have Saturday travel plans already, I think road conditions will have improved at that point, but you got to keep in mind that while there will be some melting on Friday, temperatures dropping into the low 20s by Saturday morning results in additional black ice out there, especially on those secondary streets that aren't able to be treated immediately. So just keep that in mind. We stay somewhat cold the rest of the weekend into next week in the low to mid 40s, which is a few degrees below normal for this time of year. In the River Valley, 21 overnight tonight, 35 your Wednesday high temperature under a mostly sunny sky. 70% chance of snow on Thursday. We'll drop it also to 30% on Friday as that shower activity tapers off from the west to the east, pushing into parts of central and eastern Arkansas on Friday. Sunshine around the area on Saturday. Hopefully that helps us melt some of this off. High temperature of 43 degrees. We also pay attention to the potential for some black ice out there this weekend as well. This is an evolving forecast, as is always the case with winter weather around these parts. We are getting a steady stream of new data in by the hour. We're analyzing it. We've got the team poring over the numbers. And so as we see things that might have to be changed in your forecast, we're going to do that right here on 5+. We'll do that over on 5newsonline.com as well. We'll be with you every step of the way, tracking road conditions and any other potential impacts that we anticipate with this winter storm. For the time being, for all of us here at 5 News, I'm Chief Meteorologist Skot Covert.